We became, through a process of reform that we started 2 years ago, probably one of the most transparent organizations in the Middle East. We are the only institution in the Middle East with an ombudsman, Diwan al-Mazalim, which basically doesn't exist anywhere else. Our transparency, because a key issue is that we saw is the stereotyping of what we do. You know, there's always the stereotyping, even in terms of our banks. When you talk to Israelis or Europeans or Americans about Palestinian banks, they think the Wild West. You know, instead of the cowboys with Texas hats, you know, with these Stetson hats, that there are hattas and machine guns and shooting and OK Corral atmosphere, you know, and in fact, we have one of the most efficient, most productive systems in the banking system. The technology, we're the only ones in the Middle East with a zero-based credit bureau, a very successful credit bureau, with a credit score, which is coming up in April. This is a problem that bugged many other jurisdictions. I was in Jordan yesterday, and then there was a demand that they wanted to have credit bureaus and to make sure that lending is proper and there's no abusers in the system. Well, we have this. We're installing what's called real-time RTGS, which makes transfers between banks instantaneous. We have a very educated banking staff. We use the best technology. We very efficient, very modern, and our people, you know, we can compete with them on a global level. One of the key things that will be done is reforming the banking sector, the relationship with consumers. We have fair credit circulars, a number which you know, to improve the relationship between the customer and the banks. We have the IFC reported on our governance code is one of the best governance code in the banking system, ensure the transparency and good practices that banks should do and should take. And I think our ability to escape the financial crisis, our losses were a few $1 million here and there. Some of our banks even had bonds in Lehman Brothers, which is the company that started the whole collapse on a global level. State building, of course, one of the key things is for us is to develop monetary policy, and we're working on this. Next week, we will be issuing the advertisement for a scholarship. We're sponsoring PhD scholarships in macroeconomic policy from our own resources. It's $50,000 for a 3 to 4 year scholarship to get a PhD in macroeconomic monetary policy from reputable universities globally. So if you know, even any of you have a master's in related fields and wants to do a PhD in economics, we will be willing to sponsor that. Plus a 5-year contract once you graduate in the PMA as a return on our investment. In order to have our currency, there are 3 requirements. One is sovereignty. We have to control the borders, and this is something that the politicians are working on, ensuring that once the Palestinian state is formed, that we have control over the borders, and then we will be in a position, theoretically, to issue our own currency. Second thing that is required is our independence. We, the PMA, by the way, we are independent. The only institution that works between the West Bank and Gaza. Just to give you an idea, since the split and the coup that happened in Gaza in 2007, the banking system transferred in and out from Gaza about $5 billion worth of transactions. These are humanitarian assistance, salaries from the West Bank into Gaza, transfers, remittances from Gazans and Palestinians overseas, financial assistance, humanitarian assistance from EU. All this came through the banking system. We don't deal with the government in Gaza and Hamas because if we do, then our correspondent banks will suspend the relationship because they'll be in violation of their laws. So we needed to protect, and then so we built a firewall between us and Hamas. The banking sector provides the service to the people, so we are not a political institution. And also we protected the bank secrecy and the proper development without interference from both governments, West Bank and Gaza. So even though we are independent, but we need to enshrine this in law, because one of the biggest things that we've learned through our review of the history of central banks is that they're littered with graveyards of currencies that become worthless. I have here, I think I have it. I always carry it with me as a reminder. I have the Zimbabwean $100 trillion, the last issue of the Zimbabwean government. This is worthless, basically. Now it's no longer a currency. But one of the major reasons this happened is that you had what's called fiscal dominance, where you had the Ministry of Finance and the president and the government telling the central bank to print money to finance the debt. This happened in many countries, happened in Argentina, happened in Turkey, happened in... So a key lesson from all these crises and disasters is that the first thing you need to do is ensure that the central bank is independent, that they don't, because governments look for the short term. There is an election coming up here, for example, or, so they look at how to ensure increased spending, and so printing more money and inflationary policies because they want to win the elections. Central banks look for the medium term and the long term to ensure that the value of the dollar or dinar or shekel or euro that you have in your pocket remains what it is, and this is their role, is the financial stability and monetary stability. And that's what we mean by it. And so to be independent is a critical element of the success of our ability to issue our own currency. And then the third element is we need to have a competent staff who really understand the Palestinian economy and who really know the ins and outs of the economy and how to develop models and forecasting and inflation targeting and and this is something that is a work in progress. We are building it up in our monetary and research department. We had restructured our old systems to be consistent with that. And we're developing this national payment system, which will ensure that smooth transfer of currency and the transaction in the banking system to increase the efficiency of the Palestinian economy. One of the key problems we face right now is the relationship with Israeli banks. Shekel is a currency that we use. Israelis are making it more difficult of us getting rid of the shekel, and so we have a crisis coming up and continues to come up, firefighting, trying to manage this relationship, which is a very inequitable relationship between us and Israeli banks. And so we look at ways to mitigate the risks that our system face through maybe deriving policies that would limit the use of shekel in the local market until such time where we'll be able either to issue our own currency or use a different currency in the system. And I'll stop here and stop for the questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wazir. Thank you very